We have a series of different topics that we will be moving through, everything from fencing requirements to calving, as a way for new producers or those interested in the industry to get an idea of what all is involved. After each topic, we'll have a short time for any questions from the audience, and then once the panel is done, we'll just have a time where everybody can mingle. So if you have any specific questions that you wanted to come ask one of them, you can do that. So, first, I thought we would kick it off by starting to talk about handling systems, and Blaine was going to talk about handling systems for us.
Good morning. I'm by no means an expert. There's people in the crowd that have been doing this twice as long as I have. Bob's still here. I know he's headed for 40 years. Bentley, you're probably over 40 years. Tom, you've been in it forever. So if I misspeak or you have a problem with it, feel free to correct me. It's not a problem. I got in '97 after we moved back from Vancouver after 9 years there. I'm a millwright by trade, still working potash. Was depopulated once. Spent some of my money getting back in after I got compensated. She didn't leave. She wasn't happy. So what I've found over the years is just experience. Right or wrong, but elk are by far, I think, smarter than most of the livestock that you're probably used to interacting with, other than maybe a pig, but they're a whole planet by themselves. So what I learned after some wrecks was just watching. Their flight distance is way shorter than a bovine. So you don't need to get close to them before they're gone. But you can use that too. And we started, I was an investor in a group that bought some very, very high-priced animals in the beginning. And so we all had to be involved. So we'd put 9 or 10 guys in the pen and try and move these animals. Well, it was like push a bush, and for hunting it's great, but it's not for handling elk in my opinion. Now I handle, nobody else comes with me. I handle them by myself, pretty much, yeah. Once you learn the characteristics of your herd, then they're a lot easier to control the herd. Handling system, the genetics have changed so much. We used to build handling systems that were 60 inches wide for the modules, swing gates. And if you're going to get involved in the trophy industry at all, that's not big enough for you. So I'd suggest any handling system that you look at be at least 72 inches wide, a full 6 feet wide, and 8 feet long for your approach to your squeeze. The other thing, in your corrals, they love to think they're getting away when you're moving them. So I've incorporated corners where they can go around that lead to the alleyway that leads to the handling system. So having pens that you can cut a couple of animals you want out of the main herd, get them into a smaller corral, and then from there move them into the alleyway and then into the handling system. But have you guys, anybody else found that as a way to work, or do you like just a straight run? Yeah. Say running corners. The other thing that works well, even in corrals, and some of our first animals we bought from Kevin down in the southeast, and I think, I'm hoping I'm talking right, I was on a bunch of different farms back then, but you had a big sweep in your corral. Did you not?
At one point, yes.
Okay, and you don't anymore?
No, you take it out quite a few years ago now.
Why did you take it?
Still have to round it arch like on the weeds.
Okay, good. The other one I saw was on Don's place. It was actually an old reindeer that had a sweep in it. And that was very creative, I thought, and worked well. Seemed to me. For the amount of animals Don had, and you guys still have them. It's got to work or it wouldn't be there. So, yeah. So that's just some of a few things. Make a plan, put it on high ground. We didn't. That's a big mistake. For drainage, you know, there's nothing worse than having your handling system full of water in the spring when you're supposed to be handling animals and doing parasite control and that type of activity. Also, make sure you can clean it out of snow in the winter time, especially your corrals. And I've seen I've worked with open handling systems and closed. If you can afford it and if you've got the plan, put a roof on your actual handling system. Have a roof and walls on the squeeze and the gates leading up to it. You know, a 40 by 40 foot pole shed works good. Put the modules around the outside. Squeeze, have a couple exits back to different pens so that you can actually separate the animals as they're coming through the handling system. You want this cow to go that way, you want this one to go that way. A lot easier to get them out of the barn, and then you don't have to handle them again when you're splitting them up. For whatever reason, feed groups or calving or however you want to do it. So there is, in my opinion, there isn't no right or wrong way. The biggest thing is, if you're going to get into it, Brandon, take a look at as many farms, talk to as many people as you can, research and set it up the way you do before you even go to pounding posts and fence. So I did build squeezes for a few years before the collapse. Your squeeze is your most important tool. I would stay away from, just my opinion again, but I would stay away from anything that has cables and go to a completely hydraulic control. And 3 actions on the squeeze, again, my opinion is important. You should be able to control the bottom in and out, which the ones I built in the beginning did not. All they did was do this. I was never a real big fan of the ones with the clamshell style and weren't connected on the bottom. They tended to swing a little bit. There's walking wall styles and all kinds of different things. And right now, if we are heading into a new era where things are going, there's a lot of used equipment out there. So if you're thinking about it, yeah, it's going for 10 cents on the dollar what it used to bring in. So, but yeah, that's the little I know. If you have questions, I'll be around all day.
So before we move on, was there any questions?
All right, I'm gonna add a couple of things to what Blaine said because I understand we're supposed to be talking to new producers here, or potentially new people. Can we just get a hand up from any of you who are here as open house new people that you're come here to find out and learn things? 1, 2, 3, 4. We got a few here. Canada as well. Okay, just a couple of things that we should probably cover is that there are regulations as far as what fencing that you do put up for elk or deer, and some minimum height requirements. Elk, the minimum standard is an 8-foot high fence. Your best construction with that is a page wire fence. And you did talk more about fencing, okay. But there are requirements for it and different types of construction materials that you can use for it. And well, we're going to put little plug in here too, because we have one of the best suppliers of fence and fence equipment in the nation here. And Tom Jensen, he's been supplying us for years and years and years. So you new people, get yourself familiar with Tom, because he'll get you set up in whatever you need.
Okay, so then we will move on to the land needed, the type of land you need, the size of land you need, the kind of animals to acre ratio. So Mark's gonna come talk to us about that.
So, can you guys hear me with this? Is it working? Somebody nod your head up and down or shake it side to side. It works, okay. So my name's Mark Wolffield. I researched the elk industry in 1996. I had animals in 1998. I toured the Conacher Farm. That's where I kind of got my first little bit of information. And then Keith Larson, which was in here, was in the industry a long time ago, taught me how to velvet. So in terms of land needed, whatever I say, somebody's going to have a second opinion. But basically, for elk, which is all I can speak to, and for you new guys, if you're interested in deer farming, then you need to spend some time with either Lance or Dave to get the stats on them. But for an elk, basically an elk eats 2 to 3% of its body weight per day. So for my area, if you take that much that they eat, and if you figure out how much feed an acre of my land produces, I can get away with maybe an elk per acre, and maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. However, that's just the pasture within my fenced area. I have area that's fenced as solid bush. Now, when I saw the Conifers area, and I've been touring other farms, they're basically 100% pasture. So it depends what type of land you fenced in, and then how many acres will actually produce animals. But like I said, 2 or 3% of the body weight is what an elk consumes. In my area, that works out to basically an animal per acre. You can do your own math depending on what type of land you bought and how much of it is non-productive land versus how much is productive land. And I think the other part I'm supposed to talk about is then how you would fence that area that you now want to put elk on. And like I said, talk to these guys about deer. Well, for me, when I started back in 1998 or 97 when I was fencing, I started with just enough to get permitted by the government. So I started with 5 acres. I bought 1 bull, I bought 5 cows, and that's where I started. Since then I've added to that. So for me, the first pen was no big deal because I can always add more feed to keep them going if I run out of grass. And then I focused on the corral after that so that I could handle the animals properly, not hurt myself, not hurt the animals. And in terms of other pens, well then you have to figure out exactly what you're going to do. Are you going to just breed animals for meat? Are you going to raise bulls because the bulls are going to fight? Or what animals are going to be side by side on your perimeter or your internal fences? And you have to decide how many pens you want. For myself, I went from the first 5 acres, then I fenced 80 acres, then I have a few other 5-acre pens that I can use to sort animals. So you have to think about kind of where you want to get to. Like, do you want hunt bulls? Do you want meat animals? Do you want both? And then how many pens are you going to have to break it down from there? So, like I said, for me, I started really, really simple, just with 5 acres, and I went from there. I guess if you have lots of dough spent, you can come by my place and I'll go spend the winters in Hawaii. So, you know, it's however you want to start. Some guys start big and spend a lot of money, and then there's guys like me that started small and then just added pens to it as they went along. So, did I cover what I'm supposed to talk about? Does anybody have any questions? Because that's better for me in terms of answering a question. Go ahead.
Government permission there. Has that regulation changed in the past 30 years?
Who knows that answer?
Sorry.
So how few acres can I fence and get a government like game farm license?
There's not a specific number. It will be based on the number of animals you want to have in there.
Okay, so tell them less animals, and then you can fence less, and you can buy whatever you want after the government guys leave. Does that make sense?
It's gonna fall into, if you have too many animals per acre, then you fall into an intensive livestock operation, which has a whole nother set of regulations. So that's why you wanna be careful with the number of animals you have per acre.
But you have to decide which species you want first. Do you want deer? Well, then maybe you can kind of have a ballpark mentality of I'll do a 20-acre project to get started. With elk, I personally would want to have at least 80 acres or 160 to be able to do what I would perceive an elk operation to do, depending on where you want to go. So it's how much money do you have and what do you want to buy? Maybe you don't have access to enough land, so you want to look at a deer farming operation because you can purchase less land. Maybe you have a 160 acres that you've bought, or it's a family operation or whatever. Well, then your number of animals changes, right? Like how much acres you have.
One thing. One thing we were talking about earlier. Do you guys know there was, I thought, a maximum number
Of animals per acre that you could have, and I have in my head it was 10.
In terms of that, and that has to do with the intensive livestock operation. So if you get, and it's based on animal units, so again, it's going to depend on whether you have elk or deer and how many animal units you have per acre, because then you fall under an intensive livestock operation, and you need to have manure management plans and all sorts of things with our agricultural operationals team.
So that's probably changed, because in the beginning, I know it was so many animals per acre. I have in my head 10. Do you know, is there a regulation?
There is still regulations for those intensive livestock operations. I don't
Do you know what elk is?
I don't know the exact number, but if somebody was interested in that, reach out to me and I can connect you with one of our engineers, and they can connect you with like what those exact numbers are. They have calculations for the different species.
Yeah, that was 28 years ago. I would imagine it's changed. Connie?
I'm just looking it up online, and it says 0.5 to 1 acre of bush per adult is required during grazing season in Saskatchewan. I looked up for elk. It says pasture for forage for white-tailed deer and elk.
Is how much? Sorry?
It says half an acre to 1 acre of bush per adult is required during the grazing season.
Bush?
That was bush, yeah. Forage, pasture and forage.
It'll be okay the first year.
But, okay, so for the new people, remember, you might only fence 5 acres, get your game farm permit, get your first few animals, but that doesn't mean you haven't got a plan for the rest of your 40 acres, and then the next year or the third year, you're working on your next pen. So, I mean, you gotta think kind of what's your plan down the road. Like, you should have probably a 5-year plan of how you're gonna move things forward. So, you start small maybe, but you have more acres, and then you have more, you know, a plan for more pens and how you might move forward. So, like, there's the government regulations, and then there's your business. So you gotta think about how am I gonna make money going forward. Any other questions?
Yeah, right here, Mark. Kelly, you still have the mic? Explain. We've kind of opened the can of worms a little bit here, but explain there are minimum specifications to go along with the license and licensing procedures. And I think never used to be a requirement. Is it actually written now that you have to have a handling system in place before a license will be granted?
Yeah, so you do need a handling facility in place. So the few things, so you have your fencing requirements, a handling facility needs to be in place, and then so that you can do your tagging and meet the other requirements within the regulations, such as inventories, tagging, etc. So
Except
that
for a hunt farm, you don't have to have a handling facility. If you're a terminal hunt farm, you don't need a handling facility.
according to the regulations, they are not exempt.
Okay, I got approved and I don't have a handling facility.
And I know a lot of the hunt farms, because they're terminal, they're not breeding farms, that's been grandfathered in, so yes, that's kind of been in practice, but according to the regulations, strict by the book, it says every game farm operation needs a handling facility. Any new operations need to have a handling facility.
Is this squeeze required?
You need to be able to handle them for the purpose of tagging and inventories.
So you could do sort pens and then a
You
cow box
could
at
have-
the end of it to start.
Yeah, I believe, and then as long as you had a means to get a squeeze if you needed it, right? Like, because I know when we had bison, my dad would rent the hydraulic squeeze, right? So I know, like, for when he did his TB testing and stuff. So certainly there's some options for squeezes out there.
So, and like, just for elk, just so you guys have some numbers, like there was an auction sale online, a squeeze went for $3,000. I know that squeeze personally, it was an excellent squeeze. The GG, often it's like $7,000, $10,000, and you could get yourself a squeeze, and then a bunch of the sword pens with the swing and sliding gates. So it's not a lot of money to kind of have the core part of this area. Any other questions?
Mark, I'm gonna add a couple things to that. The squeezes that we have are permanently situated on the farm. This is for the new producers again. This is not quite like you can't go to Flaman's and rent a portable squeeze. You pretty well got to own your own, unless there's someone's got a special one built and they can move it around, a mobile one. Everything is an in-place type of system, and you've got to buy it and own it.
Other questions? What about the deer guys? Maybe it'd be good for you guys to mention, you know, how many deer per acre, how small could you start? Lands? Okay, so they're saying 10 deer per acre, and I could have 20 acres and I could start a deer ranch, right? And I could be producing animals and then sell to somebody that had a hunt preserve. So, like I started talking to Lance a little bit more in this last year, and the deer is definitely a serious possibility for folks that are looking at some small enterprise and smaller chunks of land, that's for sure.
Kelly, when you were in the process of reviewing the legislation and putting together the new animal production regulations, did you have any discussions about how to justify the excessive web of regulations that govern cervids, but not bison, not cattle, not horses, not...
So a lot of the regulations with the domestic game farm animals have to do with that differentiation of crown versus farmed cervids, right? So that's the reason for a lot of our regulations, the reason for the tagging and those pieces. So it's really around that protection of crown animals and the domestic game farm animals. If we did not have the domestic game farm regulations, cervids would be classified as captive animals, and you would either need a zoo license or they would be captive wildlife, and environment would have control over those animals. So the domestic game farm regulations allow you guys to operate. I guess that's the bottom line with those regs.
I understand that. Why so extensive? Why is so much prescribed 0.5 acres of bush?
Oh, that's not in our regulations. I believe that's we don't have 0.5 acres of bush or anything like that in our regulations. That must be a guidance document that you found online.
But still, I understand the differentiation, but the differentiation could be done very simply. You don't need a web of regulations to accomplish what you said was the goal.
Yeah, so our regulations cover off licensing. We cover off our surveillance, CWD surveillance program is in there, tagging, inventories, birth deaths, and escapes and intrusions. Those are the key components of our regulations. The key sections or components of it, right? And then I was just looking at some of the intensive livestock operation pieces, and that's where, like we were talking about, like a lot of animals, so a feed lot, those types of things fall under that. And there's a whole, I guess, flow chart of decisions, but basically you can walk through the flow chart. It tells you your animal unit conversion, how many square feet of area you need per animal if you fall under that. And just to note, if you start falling into that, you start falling into RM approvals and a whole bunch of other pieces that fall with an intensive livestock operation. So if you're looking at setting up, I would really look at those levels and make sure that you're not falling under an intensive livestock operation, because it'll be a lot of extra regulation and steps for you.
I've got another question. question while we're on this same topic. My family and some of my close friends accuse me of forgetting lots of things from time to time. Not usually includes meetings or other things, but I was checking my memory to see when the consultative meeting with the industry either happened or is about to happen with these changes that are coming in regulation.
So yeah, right now the Animal Production Act regulations are being finalized. There was consultations last year. So those are being finalized. We don't have a date for them to be proclaimed yet. So they're gonna be, sometime probably within the next year. Still waiting for those to be finalized and to be proclaimed. And just for all intents and purposes, for the people in the room here, those regulations, for you guys, they're gonna look different, but there aren't any significant changes for game farm operators in the new regulations.
So my final comment is this whole thing is for people that would like to maybe get into the industry. So by all means, you can talk to me, come up and talk to me, shake my hand. I'll give you my cell phone number. You can start texting, share information by email. If I don't know something, then I can pass you on to somebody that's a lot more smarter in that subject than me. This is potentially a turning point in the industry. I've had a bad attitude for a long time. Last year, this conference changed my mind this much. I've done everything. I've sold hunt bulls, I've velveted, ran away from bulls that were mad at me, and I did everything. And I think maybe it's a start in Saskatchewan where this is an industry that people can get into it, and it has a real economic potential. So if you're scared and you don't want to talk to somebody, come up and talk to me, and I'll help you get the information you need if you're even on the fence about moving forward. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, I put up my hand at the beginning that I wanted to learn more because I'm a relatively new producer. We've only had animals for a few years. But I will say that if you are looking at getting into this industry, the people here are so helpful and kind and forthright with information. They're just willing to help you, so it's great. And if they want more information, you said to contact you, that would be the Ministry of Agriculture Game Farm Unit.
Yeah, so if you're looking for information on licensing, regulations, you can reach out to myself, or we have our game farm investigators in the different areas. So Mike, Renee, and Danny are also good resources for like boots on the ground, practical, information. They'll work with you to make sure you're meeting those regulations.
Okay, so next we'll have somebody come up to talk about the types of grasses or crops you might want to plant onto your land before you bring animals onto it to get some good forage for them. So Trevor is going to come talk about that.
Hello? Hi, I'm not going to get up there, I'll sit down. Hi, I'm Trevor Schmidt. Farmed with my dad, Ralph Venus, since the mid-90s in elk in the Mooseman area. So we started basically with 10 acres. I think we bought like 17 bred elk the first summer, and that's how we started. We got about 350 acres fenced off now, and just sowed down another 120 acres of grass. We're gonna fence it off. When we started, I think we had Rome alfalfa, Timothy, as far as seeding down, and of course over the years the alfalfa kind of weeds itself out. I think multi-species is what you need to reach. It's good for the soil, and that's got to be good for the animals. I'd really like to find some trees that they can keep eating and keep growing at the same time. We got a shelter belt. We're gonna try to fence on each side and let them eat the tops and see how long it lasts. Because I think they really need that for nutrition. When I sowed down the grass last year, it was fairly expensive. I had a multi grasses and legumes, some clovers. I was about $105 an acre to seed the grass down, and then I think it cost about $30 an acre for the guy to do it, and then have a cover crop in there too. So it's fairly expensive to get her started, but I'm hoping it will pay off in the long run. just some of the grasses from our good old elk farming handbook. We got orchard grasses, meadow brome, red fescues, alfalfa, sandfoins, red clover, and chicory. I think the elk, we try not to graze the pastures too late in the fall where we want to keep our alfalfa. It seems to kill it off. So rotational grazing is what I've been trying to do. I've been using electric fences to move animals around, but it does help if it rains. We're usually feeding hay until the end of May at least to get the pastures started. So let's hope for some rain this year. Yeah, if you have any questions, or if you want to tour our farm, we live right on number 1 highway outside of Mooseman. So look for the wind towers, and we're right underneath them. So thank you.
Did anybody have any questions about that?
You know, just mentioned now, but that program.
Oh, yes, I forgot.
To get on that program, you should check.
Yeah, 2 years you gotta have.
Type of draft qualified
Yeah,
for.
that's.
You get quite a bit of the expense covered.
Yeah, actually, I did use the SCAP for that seeding. I had that on my notes and must have missed it.
Like, how do you certified or number 1 crafting?
Yep,
There's
yeah.
no rules.
Yeah, that's right.
And, 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know that program was in place. And, so I
Yeah, it's a really good program.
Improved for their program.
And also for watering and stuff like that, as you heard yesterday in the presentation there, that, yeah, those are all really good programs. For the seeding down, I think it has to be cropped for at least 2 years, I believe, so you can't just rip up your pasture and re-sow it down. So, yeah, good question.
The program they're talking about is the SCAP, the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. You can look it up, and there's a whole list of things that there's rebates for.
When it comes to adding to the feeding in the fall, do you find that just having hay and that in the fall is enough, or do you need to supplement with grains for overwinter?
If Trevor wants, he can answer this, but that's actually Gord is going to talk to that next if you would prefer Gord talk about that. So I might as well just hand it over to Gord.
Actually, I kind of have, I guess, an open question. Does anybody actually have success with, being able to maintain alfalfa out in the field? Because they do, elk very much do like alfalfa, but it's also hard to grow it there.
Well, first problem is moles. If you've got moles, they put hell on alfalfa. And the only way
The only way I've been able to keep any amount of alfalfa going is really rotate, like let them eat it and then get them off of it. Like you got to really monitor how much they're eating it. Yeah. And you can't go too late into the fall with it either. No, usually if it's any good, it gets cut for feed and then they get on it and. It's great feed, and it's definitely what you need, one of the things you need, and it comes back every spring, but it will wear out for sure.
Yeah, some of those pastures we've had sown down since probably 2000s, so as long as we don't graze it late in the fall, we'll hay it and graze it once, and then get off there and not graze it until it freezes. That helps.
Yeah, we really noticed like earlier when we didn't have many animals, it was easy to keep it for a number of years. But lately, yeah, it's one bad summer and you waste like.
Guess I'd have a.
Your pastures? No. Did it once? Yeah, I used to. They had huge rivers.
Yeah.
So they said it's a straight phosphorus. Straight phosphorus. I get what I can do.
You guys use mics over from here?
talking
they're
about
asking-
fertilizing your pastures, and then so Bentley said he put pure nitrogen on his field. I've done the same thing, and then, I don't know your name, but you're using phosphorus.
Yeah, I suppose I've got a Colt or two I can put liquid phosphorus on, and that, like, it makes a huge difference, but it is expensive too.
I put nitrogen in and phosphorus.
We've used sulfur, but
I guess my question to the crowd would be, has anybody ever tried just broadcasting alfalfa on top of your pasture, letting the animals tramp it in a wet season, and had any luck with getting that going?
I would like to know what a wet season is.
A couple of years ago, we actually just used a no-till drill, and he just grazed it in. I forget if that's the year we had some, or rain or not, but we did get some catch. I didn't have any animals on there for the whole summer, and I did get quite a bit of alfalfa coming, some clover, and then we grazed it after the frost in the fall. They had good feed right through most of the winter. So.
You know, we've tried a variety of things to try to keep a legume component on the pastures, but I think the idea of prolonging it, just give it up. It's going to die. That's the nature of the beast. So you have to continually seed. And the wonderful thing is, even if you put it into dry ground, as soon as it rains, then a lot of that seed will germinate, and it'll germinate a year, 2 years, 3 years later. And the other one that works really well, it's also very short-lived, is red clover. It's cheaper to buy, the seed is cheaper, and if you broadcast it, there's a variety of ways to get it in the ground. And one of the most successful things that I ever did, and it's something you could consider this year because it's been relatively snow-free. Well, it's getting that way again, but you put that down now when we still have the frost. And the frost seed really works it into the ground, plus there's moisture with it, and you can sometimes get an excellent catch. But even if you don't get the catch the first year, don't give up. The seed's still there. It's gonna grow, a lot of it. Some's gonna be eaten by birds, and some's not gonna germinate, but it's still there. You're gonna get it. So I think that program of broadcasting and watching the weather and be ready to go whenever the weather looks promising, get it on there, and if you don't get it right away, just be patient.
One of the things that the cattle guys in my area are trying, or have tried, has been fairly successful on older stands and pasture and alfalfa, especially if it's got some alfalfa left in it, is in sandy land we have a huge problem with moles. Your hayland gets so rough you can hardly farm it. So in the spring, just when the frost is coming out, and it's nice if you have a first rain. If anybody's familiar with the Kelly harrow, they're odd-looking beasts, but they've got discs on a cable string, and you can hit it, and it looks like you've completely tore up your field and killed it. What it does is it gets rid of it, it levels it out, and with a couple passes, it levels it all out, and as soon as the rain comes, the alfalfa comes back like crazy, and you get rid of some of the grass that is overtaken, and the alfalfa will come back for sure. But it's you need to fertilize it as well. But it really is a cheaper way to get that back without having to reseed. And it's rough because it's a fairly fast unit, and your first pass or two is you got to strap in.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll get Gord to come talk about winter feeding, pellets, bales, grain, cost, and how much you would need of that.
Hello, Gord Lancashire. I'm in Delmas, Saskatchewan, which is just west of the Battleford. It's about 20 minutes. For our farm, in the wintertime I'll start, we basically just shred bales with a bale shredder, and the hay is a mixture that we grow ourselves of mostly alfalfa, brome grass, bit of timothy, and depending on the year, again, with the moisture, how the quality of it will depend on how much we feed for pellets. We feed a pellet on the side about 3 pounds per head per day is what we're aiming for, and it's done through a nutritionist through SCA, and the formula is available to anybody who's interested. And we also put a humic acid in it, and And the idea is we're trying to see if the humic acid will somewhat detour or help get rid of that prion, the chronic wasting disease prion. We're not sure if we're successful with it, but we're still continually going. I guess it's year 2 that we've been doing it for. And we feed with pails, so we go in with the quads or the trucks and fill pails up, put so much pellet in, and then top it off with oats, because it is a concentrated mix. And then we pail feed that, and we find just pail feeding with the animals gets them a little more used to us and just calm down, easier to handle and work with. And we pretty much pail feed year round. In the summertime, when the grasses are growing well, they will not eat the oats as much, but for the most part, they love oats, and we'll throw a little bit of barley in with them sometimes if we have barley, but mostly just oats in a pellet for our supplement. And then we also have the Sweet Pro mineral tubs that we feed year round. We give them free choice. Every pasture has them, and they'll eat that depending on the experts on it say that they will take what they think they need or use. So sometimes, depending on some pastures, they'll go through a tub fairly quick. They're 225-pound tubs, so they're fairly big. And other times, they'll sit there for 2 months or 3 months. And generally, in the summertime, they'll be off the tubs. They'll eat the tubs more in the wintertime for the most part. So we'll feed years like this, where we had drier area. We started feeding hay back in August. Beginning of August this last year. So with that and with the pellets, it seems to keep them in pretty good shape. We'll boost the pellets up, but we just kind of keep an eye on, see what they look like and and how much they're chewing on the mineral blocks too. If they're chewing on the mineral blocks more, we'll maybe give them a little bit more on the pellets there, but we just kind of monitor it. We'll feed the hay until grass starts growing or until they stop eating the hay. We watch the animals and see how much they're leaving on the ground. We find with the shredder, it definitely breaks up the stems or the harsher hay. It'll break it up and they'll consume more, they'll waste less, because the elk seem to be, and we only run elk, seem to be a pickier animal. They don't they'll always look for the best stuff, or they seem to want to look for something that is the least of. So in the pastures, if we have an area where there's alfalfa and a little bit of, say, some good timothy, they'll chew that timothy right down to there's nothing, and then they'll move on to something different. Whatever there's the most of, they seem to leave that. And then on the side too, we have flax bales that we have rolled up, and we put them just for wind blocks and shade and protection for the calves and stuff. And they're slowly eating these flax bales. So we're not sure why or what, but they seem to enjoy them. And even in the middle of the summer, they'll be eating some really good, if it rains, some good hay, then they'll go and have a little snack on the flax bales. And they're actually deteriorating. We're gonna have to put more out there. We thought that over time, the twine and stuff is starting to deteriorate, fall right off, and they're starting to break apart a bit. But for the most part, yeah, they're still eating them. What else can I tell you about feeding elk? Cost, I don't really have a cost, depending on what your hay costs are gonna be. I guess if you're buying hay, your average bale is probably gonna run you, these years in the drought area, about $100, $110 a bale, somewhere in there, I would guess. The Sweet Pro mineral tubs are about $230 or so a tub now, they just went up. And oats, whatever.
Oh, no, but
Well, it's just like $55 a pound, so that's 13 cents a pound. That's like 13 cents a pound. And if you're buying hay with $100 per pound or per bale, that's like 7 cents a pound to buy the bale.
I have a question. What's an important supplement you should be feeding? Is there anything that's outstanding above what everybody else is getting? Is there something you should be more aware of and watch for in your supplement?
Yeah, Sweet Pro mineral. The Sweet Pro tub has got extra copper, and elk seem to be. The Sweet Pro tubs have extra copper in them, and it's supposed to be a usable copper, so the animals will uptake the copper, have a more usable copper. Elk are usually, from what they tell us, deficient on copper more so. So the copper is what we're trying to get more in them, and people have used the buliuses, and that's what you'll stick in their mouth and push it down their throat. We've never worked with that ourselves. We've basically just done with the what the tubs have had for us, just more convenient and less handling of the animals. And I was told by our nutritionist that we want to watch. I used to put out the copper blocks, the salt blocks for them, and they would lick them a bit, but they say with our pellet, what we're feeding, and with the Sweet Pro tub, you don't have to use the salt blocks. So we haven't been putting salt blocks out ourselves for probably 2 or 3 years, I'm guessing now, somewhere in there. Ian?
Just adding to the copper, I think that Gordon's emphasis on that specific nutrient is very, very important for elk. But you also have to remember that there are other minerals that interfere with the uptake of copper. So when you start looking at your nutrition program, you have to analyze everything, then you have to balance it off. And in particular, if you've got high levels of molybdenum or iron, that's going to interfere with the animal's uptake of copper. So you have to compensate by either finding the source of molybdenum, if there is one specific source, and reduce it, or else you have to correspondingly feed more copper. And the research that's been done so far, they have yet to find a promising dose of copper for cervids. And especially whitetails, they try, but if you feed too much, something like more than 8 parts per million in the feed per sheep of copper, it'll kill the sheep, which I personally think is a good idea. I think that you have to bear in mind that the cervids really need very high levels. And they tried with a whitetail buck in a research situation, they fed it up to 4 grams of copper per day. And it here is just very important. And it seems to play a role in resistance to CWD2, and that's really, that's just observational science, not substantial, but it really is essential.
Yes, thanks, Ian. Ian's one of the authors of the Elk Farming Handbook, and is a great resource for us, for sure. Somebody else had a hand up, sorry?
Is there any other mineral tubs that anybody knows of other than Sweet Pro? We have a dealer in the Yorkton area that doesn't care about elk. I asked him, co-op? Is there a name that goes along with them? They just offer a bison breeder thing just because it's got high copper, then they recommend it, but it's quite expensive. I don't know if it actually works for elk or not.
Well, what you can do is get your feed company nutritionist to sample your hay, get your hay results, which will give you an idea what your grass is doing in your area. Then you'll know what you're deficient, because in my area I'm deficient in phosphorus, so I'm buying a tub from the co-op. It's from feeding a drum, but I also get Christmas tubs. Feeding a drum is the phosphorus tub, so that my animals get the right phosphorus. That might not apply to other people's plants, but that's from the nutritionist once I test the hay, get an idea of the hay and grass is like.
Okay. Yeah, we use the Sweet Pro because there's no sugar or molasses in it to eat it.
Where do you get this?
We sell them. A little bit of a conflict of interest. Yeah, I can supply you with the tubs. We've been selling them for probably 20 years now, and we've been using them for 20 years, and we've been quite happy with the results of them. And we've got trucks usually running around somewhere. I'll get my kids, or my wife's a great truck driver too. Another job for you.
Would you deliver?
We could, yeah. If a person wanted and we're coming in the area, we could probably arrange something, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, for sure. And for our ranch, we're a CWD positive ranch. We're one of the longest running positive ranches right now. And our conception rate for the last 3 years is 100%. So every cow that we expose, we get a calf out of it. And that's 30 to 35 animals we've been breeding in the last 3 years. And even before that, we were 90%. We'd lose a calf here and there. So our conception rate's been very good. So if it's our feed, what we're doing, I'm not sure, but something seems to be working pretty good for what's going on in our farm anyways. Ralph?
Yeah, I'd emphasize Ian's point on copper. You might have some people on the panel there that would tell us some more of the, I know there's a white ring that comes on the elk that when they're short of copper. Are there any more signs, or maybe you could talk about that a bit?
Visibly, there are a number of symptoms of copper deficiency that you can find in the animals when you're looking at them. One is a poor hair coat. The hair will get kind of rough and almost fine and almost like a baby's hair. It'll turn a sandy color. You will get problems in reproduction, fertility. Your conception rates go down. On the bull side of it, copper shortage will also diminish the production of velvet and ultimately antler. So it affects a lot of the metabolism of the animal. And like I said, you kind of look at it, they all look good one day and then they look poor the next day. Well, then that's usually what your problem is that, oh, wait a minute, they're short of copper. And there's all kinds of ways that it can happen, but it's a very important thing to add to your diet.
Another little telltale sign of shortage of copper would be a perfect example on that mount over there of old Dusty without his antlers on. Take a look at his eyes. You'll see that he has kind of raccoon eyes or whatever. That's another indicator for anybody that doesn't know.
I'll just mention also, with our bale shredder, we find that shredding the bales rather than putting them in a feeder seems to knock the dust and any mold out of them. It just seems to be we think it's healthier for the animals. If we have a hay that we can get up, we roll pretty much most of our own hay, grow our own hay. If we have stuff that seems to be less mold or less moisture that got caught in, we will put that in the feeders. And years where we've had problems where it's been wet and we can't get the hay rolled up dry, we also have an anhydrous tank that we inject the bales with anhydrous ammonia to take up the moisture. And that also kills the weed seeds. And we've been quite successful with that. And the animals seem to really enjoy it too.
How much hay would you suggest a new producer kind of budget for, considering, like you said, you were feeding last year, like towards the beginning of August, all the way until when pasture is starting to grow there for the winter per head? Like, I know we say 2 to 3% of their body weight per day, but what does that really translate when you're trying to buy hay?
Anybody else want to
comment on that?
Comment?
On our farm, we'll use a rule of if there's 100 head on the farm, we want 200 bales on the farm would be a minimum. It's nice to have 3. So 2,000 to 3,000 pounds to get you from about mid-October to mid-May. That's without.
Yeah, three bales per head per year would be a pretty safe number. Years like this, it's tough, but it's no rain, and we have to feed early, so it makes it a challenge that way for sure. But yeah, I think if you bank on 3 bales, it would be pretty close.
Quality of your hay makes a huge difference. If you've got better quality hay, you need less bales, or you can get away with less bales. The rule of thumb we used when we started was a bale and a half, but that's subjective because what's the size of a bale? So it was a bale and a half and 30 bushels of oats per animal is what we used. I don't know how relevant that is anymore, or if it was, but it seemed to get us started.
The one thing I'll say about that too is, especially with Saskatchewan now with all the drought, I learned this the hard way in 2002, 2003. If you have to buy a portion of your hay, or even if you're making it, and all of a sudden your production drops, and all your meters production drops, the price is going to go through the roof. So if you plan for a portion of hay that goes over your needs for that 1 year, then you hit that drought, and you have a portion of hay that can stretch you through that next year. You you have to then turn around and always top-scotch those bales. You can't just leave them sit there, they have to be mixed in the next year. But I did that since 2003, and like it saved me other years when we had a drought.
And I'll also be around and open to any questions or conversation. And if you want to tour our ranch too, you're more than welcome to come see what we have set up and what we do and how we do it. Thank you.
Great. And just because I just thought of it when I was sitting there, that SCAP program, we had a presentation on it yesterday, and they actually have a new entrant program for new farmers to help them get into the industry, because a lot of the rebates that they're offering have, you have to make this much in gross revenue, but they are now recognizing that new producers won't necessarily make that right away, so they have this program to kind of help you out with that. You'll have to read more about it online, and the people there are really helpful, so you can reach out about that. Next, I will get Harley to speak on fencing, elk fencing specifically. We'll have deer fencing next. But elk fencing, how to do it, what the costs, what you need to do, all that stuff.
Hello, my name's Harley Mauer, for anybody that doesn't know me. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I started noticing I had a problem in my late 20s and 30s, running into an issue with elk hunting and grain farming. The schedules were always overlapping, so I decided there's a cure for this. We're going to start fencing and get into elk. And I think it's helping me, especially while helping everybody else there. So somehow I got hooked into giving some prices on fencing. There is a couple in the room here that knows more than anybody else, and that's Tom and Linda Jensen here. So if you need anything, just talk to them. And but saying that, did a few phone calls, got some pricing on fence posts and wire, this and that. Seems like 12-foot posts in that 5 to 6 diameter range are going to run you at $21 to $25 a post. That's off of 3 quotes I got. 14-foot corner posts, good deal here. For some reason, 1982 on 1 quote, so you may as well just buy them and cut the bottom 2 feet off, I guess. 2 7/8 drill stem, which is quite commonly used. Kijiji, they're running $60 to $75 a joint. You'll get 2.5 posts out, so roughly $2 to $2.50 a foot on the posts there. Wire pricing. This is a 12.5 gauge class 3 galvanized high tensile fixed knot fencing that Tom sells. Tree Island brand, 2096-3, which I didn't really realize was being manufactured, but it would be a good option for your smaller animals like deer or sheep or fallow deer or whatever. Keep the coyotes out. Comes in a 165-foot roll, $350 a foot, which is a bit pricey, but there's a lot of extra iron in there, so that's why. 2096-6 wire comes in 300 and 500-foot rolls, and this is probably one of the more common wires used, is now running $220 a foot. 1796-6 wire, it's going to run you about $1.90 to $2 a foot. We brought along with us some of the other fencing tools that you're going to need, starting from wire snips to wire twisters. This is one of the best $400 you can spend. Tom has them. Actually, all of this came from Tom. Just hook it to a cordless drill for twisting your wires, tying off, or joining wire rolls, stuff like that. This little gadget right here you hook to a cordless drill. It's used for attaching wire clips around the steel posts and the wire. You just slip it over the end of the clip, get the drill, twist off until it snaps off, and you're done. I've gotten a little bit too old to pound staples, so it kind of comes in handy. Plus, on the farm, we found that the bulls tend to raise havoc on the wood posts, so we generally have been switching to steel posts everywhere. These clips here are used for joining, like say, single lines, maybe an animal, put the antler into the wire, wrecked one or whatever, so you will take the wire stretcher here, clamp each end on either side of the hole, start cranking it, tighten your wire together, put your crimp or your sleeve on, and then use your crimper here to keep the wire in place then. For stretching, you'll have an 8-foot stretcher bar, I guess they call it. You lay your wire on the bar, pound some wedges into it, and then just pull with a front end loader or track or skid steer or whatever you have handy to tighten up the wire. Not sure on the price of that. I'm going to say maybe a couple $100, Tom. Is that about right?
That's half price.
Oh, okay. But you can't really put wire up without one, so it's necessary. On our farm, with the land we have, it's kind of somewhat rolling, so we've just kind of went with a 24-foot post spacing. Now, saying that, when you're building your fence, you're always going to want a post on the crest of a hill and one in the bottom of a low spot. And I think it was Bentley mentioned something that he welds a chain link to the top of the post on a hill to hold the wire up, just to make stretching and standing up wire a little bit easier. Corner posts, you generally want a larger diameter and deeper depth. We'll use, and maybe this is a bit excessive, but we'll use a 6-inch 125 wall corner post, 14 feet long. Then our brace posts will be a 4.5-inch 125 wall pipe, if we can find 14 feet. And then we'll put our horizontal bracing in between the corners and the brace posts. One at about hip height, one at about 7.5 feet high on your first section, and then one at about 4.5, 5 feet high on your next section. And I think the general rule would be your bracing should be 2.5 to 3 times the height of your wire. So if your wire's 8 feet, you probably want to be bracing out to 24 feet, keep things in place. And I highly suggest trying to do everything right the first time, because there's nothing worse than building fence. The second time, like replacing it's harder. So then we got into some total costs per mile on a 2096 wire. The wire alone for a mile at $220 a foot is going to run you $11,600. 12-foot posts at 24-foot spacing. For a mile, you're going to need 220 posts. Will run you another $5,300 for a total cost of pretty much $17,000 a mile. Now that's with new wire, new posts, everything like that. There's used wire out there that you can find off and on, used posts, and we started out, free power poles, whatever. So it's whatever is really available to you to try and keep costs down, because it does end up costing you a fair bit. One thing I did notice, I thought when we first started out, $1 a foot for wire was expensive. Well, you can pay that now for used wire, so I guess actually in a way it was a good investment. Assuming that the prices keep going up, this still might be a good investment, so. The other thing I just want to mention, this elk farming handbook, which is sold through North American Elk Breeders, and we have one of the authors actually in the room, Ian, and there's one on the silent auction here, is like a Bible. It is invaluable. There's so much information in here that everyone should actually own one. I just got one here a few years back, and even after raising elk for 29 years, you're always looking through it and learning things, whether it's fencing projects or disease issues. There's everything in here. So thanks, Ian, for all the work you put into this.
Is there any questions regarding the fencing for elk?
Yeah, you had talked about 2096 and 1796 and 2096-3. Do you want to just explain kind of what that is?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So the 20 stands for the amount of lines, your horizontal lines. So it's either 17 or 20 horizontal lines, I guess, wires. 96 is the inches tall, 8 feet tall. And then either 3 or 6 is the amount of inches per vertical stay. There's benefits to both. Obviously, 1796 is cheaper than 2096. But 2096, you have tighter squares at the bottom. That helps for predator, keeping coyotes out and things like that.
I guess I should mention that for the coyote issue, Tom also sells, I call it razor wire, but it's not. It's just long barbed wire that you can lay along the bottom. We haven't tried it out yet, but it looks like it should work. Because no matter what spacing you have on your page wire, they can still always dig underneath, so you got to keep them coming underneath. And kind of looking forward to trying it out, because we do have a bit of a problem with them digging underneath all the time. You can also go another route and go with like a 4 or 5 foot page wire and lay it along the ground and then bring it up the wire maybe a foot or 2 or whatever, and that should solve that problem too.
Has anyone ever had a problem with the snow and the fence? So you start off with an 8 foot fence in the fall, but you end up with like a 5 foot fence by the end of the winter. And is there anything that anyone's ever put on top of their post to extend their fence, just that extra foot to stop the big guys from looking down over top of the fence? Or you just push the snow like a normal person?
I guess depending what your posts are, if they're drill stem or iron posts, whatever, you can always weld a 2 or 3 foot piece on and use maybe 3 foot page wire just across. I know we've done that in a situation where we put the wire through the water slough, and of course your water level changes this way and that way, so we are getting to the point in the wet years we only have 4 or 5 feet of wire sticking out, so we just turned in some drill stem in the top and then run 4 foot page wire to height in that spot.
On our ranch, we had to keep our fences away from the bush. Anywhere we were too close to the bush, the wind would come through and there'd drifts, and we were having trouble with the animals and one next door visiting the neighbors. So we moved a lot of wire over the years to get it away from the bush. And when we originally set up, we thought it would be a great idea to have it close by for different reasons.
I just want to put this out there for the new producers that if you're interested in learning and fencing at all, we are on a project right now too. There's nothing like hands-on. Just ask Matt when it came to working elk at our place. The only way to really learn is just come do it. And we had Matt and Adrian Isa was come out, and we run some cows through, just did some pour on Ivermectin or whatever. And I think they appreciated that. And then we had them out to do some help with our AI. And these were brand new producers. And the first year after that, they were AI. So that's the easiest way to learn, is just get out there, look at places, and help out, whatever.
Any other questions? So I will say we do have a couple of these elk farming handbooks that were brought here for us to sell to anybody who wants, so you can find one of us afterwards, I guess, if you're interested in that. And Harley mentioned Tom's name a lot. Do you want to wave for anybody who doesn't know who you are, Tom? He's right there. And if you need his contact information or anything, you can always just email the Saskatchewan Cervid Alliance and we can pass on information like that. As well as if you're looking for used fence and posts and stuff. I know when we were getting into it, a lot of these guys knew people who were selling, so that helped us. So now Dave will speak about deer fencing.
Hey, David Olenberger. I'm a deer farmer. Haven't been doing it that long, but partly I owe you a beer, I guess, because you made my job real easy. You covered it pretty good. Basically, everything that Harley said is true. The only thing I can, I guess, elaborate on a little bit is when it came to the snowdrift question. Tom does sell a 10-foot wire, and that's what I used on my farm initially in the pens, just because my location and where my pens are, it's sort of prone to drifting when we get them nice little winter storms. So I just sort of bit the bullet off the hop and went with the 10-foot wire, and a drill stem post cut in half, so instead of getting 3 posts out of one, I get 2. But yeah, other than what Harley said, it's basically all the same. When it comes to deer, pen shape, some guys like the pie shaped kind of pens for working their deer and handling them. Some guys like the square pens. It's kind of whatever you got to work with. I mean, they'll accommodate to it, I guess. Just keep in mind you want lots of gates and different options for them. You want corners for them to feel like they're getting away from you, because that's what they want to do. They don't want to be petted on the ears or anything like that. They want to feel like they're getting away from you. So when you're designing stuff, like your handling facility and your alleyways, incorporating it in all your pens, just keep that in mind, and give them lots of option. They might want to stand in that one corner where you got the gate the one time, and the next day they might want to use the other corner on the other side of the pen. So just give yourself the option. Gates on your pens. I like to keep mine maybe 4 inches off the ground clearance, so that it still swings freely, but there's not really a problem with stuff getting underneath it. You can lay a piece of pipe on the ground to kind of deter stuff from trying to dig underneath the fence. I've got a dog in the yard with my animals. It's the best coyote deterror there is, as far as I'm concerned. It took a little bit for him to get used to the animals and stuff like that. He learned that it hurt to run along the fence and stuff like that at the beginning, but he learned quick, and he's the best guard dog that I could ask for now. He keeps the coyotes at bay. I haven't had any issues with anything getting in or anything like that. I think I'm touching on
I'll just add on the gates, your swinging gates, we come up with a design where there's a wheel on the outside, and then on the inside of the gate, we support the gate on the bottom hinge. Then the top hinge is a floating hinge. And it's all adjustable, so if your snow builds up, you just lift your gate up with your bottom hinge just with a small bottle jack or a tire type of thing. And the gates are built out of just square tubing, and we run stretch of wire on them with some cross bracing. So they're really light, and they're very easy to open and close. You're never pushing it, you're never fighting with the snow. So we'll get pictures of them, maybe I'll get it put up on the website, and they're easy to build. And I've got special carriers that we built to build the gates. So if somebody wants to build them, you can come grab the carriers and you build them and spin them around. And it works really well. They're really good gates. And also our corner posts, I guess, we use a double corner post, so we don't share the corners. We spend money and put an extra post in there. So every run, if it doesn't have a gate on it, it'll have its own post. So if an animal takes out a fence for whatever reason, you're not dealing with a corner. You've only got one. You're not pulling on two separate fences. And we found that for the price of what an extra post is on the end of the gate, it seemed to be successful for us also.
Yeah, and on my farm, my gates, I get them built out of chain link fence. It's really, I'm not a welder or anything. I can make two pieces of metal stick together, but I don't put much faith in it. The cost of what it is to get the gate obviously depends on your opening size and how high you want it. But I, just phoning around and stuff like that, talking to metal fabricator guys, welders and that sort of stuff who able to build me something. It was cheaper to phone a company like Phoenix Fence or one of those other chain link manufacturing companies to just build you the gates, and they have all the hardware that accommodates your drill stem pipe or drilling through a wooden post or whatever you're going to use. So you bet.
Hey, your dog. Tell us more about your dog.
A dog with deer. So what kind of a dog is it? And did you train it, and how did you train it? And did it ever live with the deer or always on the outside of the fence?
Okay, so his name's Louie. He's a Lassie Collie, so he's like a cattle dog. I don't typically take him in the pen with me at all, but he hangs out on the outside. And like I said, at first, when I first brought deer to the farm, he found them very interesting. And they were very responsive when he'd bark at them and stuff like that, and he really got a kick out of that. And then he got a kick or two from me, and he learned. It took a little bit of patience and stuff like that, but he learned, and I mean now he's real good. I can open the gate and drive the tractor in the pen to go do feeding or whatever, and while the gate's open and I'm driving that piece of equipment in, he's standing right at the entrance of the gate, kind of, laying there, just, I guess guarding, making sure everything's okay. Dogs are smart animals. They'll figure it out quick. And a couple guys that I talked to when I said I had a dog in the yard, they thought I was crazy, but I don't know, it works awesome. And maybe be best to buy a younger pup or something like that you could train initially, and they'd catch on quicker. But I mean, he was there before the deer were. So, but yeah, he's been great. So.
Does he patrol the outside of the pen?
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, he'll go around the outside, and in the evening when the coyotes are howling or whatever, he'll run to the south end of the yard or whatever and sit on the hill, and he'll bark at them. I mean, it's annoying when you're trying to go to sleep sometimes, but he's earning his keep. So
I can just add one thing to that. We had a
piece of land that we were releasing, and it was very treed, and it was very difficult to get the animals out because they always would run back and forth in the trees. And the person that we were actually leasing the land from had horses, and he would go in with his horse, and the elk just, calmly and whatever would, just go out of the pen versus chasing them on foot or with quads. We found that to be just amazing, because he would say, just call me the day before you want to come out and deal with them. And we got there, they were all there, and they were all calm versus all hyped up and hitting fence posts and stuff.
Connie, I've never had a horse that could catch an elk. I sold my horses. I'm just like, they can't catch them. So. Something that we're seeing down in the stateside for especially our deer guys are the Great Pyrenees. And they're putting the Great Pyrenees pups in with the weaned bottle deer. And eventually the pups don't know they're not deer. The deer doesn't know that's a dog. And they're growing up in the pens with them. They move them straight out in the other pens with them. And they have been excellent guard dogs. They'll have maybe a dog in every single pen. And that has worked really good. The Pyrenees seem to take to it a lot better. Of course, they're protection anyhow. So that's worked really good. So if that helps anybody as well. So.
We have Great Pyrenees on our yard too. They're not in our elk pens, but they have access to run all around them, and we find that they keep the coyotes away from our pens. And they're used to the elk, like they don't go up and bark at the elk or anything, and the elk are used to them, and yeah, it's a good relationship.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody putting one in an elk pen because I think the elk are a little bit more protective. Even raising them up, they seem to want to stop them. But I have a German Shepherd that patrols my area as well, and it's kind of like Louis. So.
While we're on the topic of dogs, like I've run Australian Shepherds with bison before for herding and that. Has anyone used shepherd dogs to help with bringing in the elk and that for the handling systems in there? Because I know it was talked before about how it works better having one person move them because they're so responsive versus 9 or 10. Has anyone used herding dogs that have been trained for the purpose to move their elk versus just like protection?
I wouldn't dare take that chance personally. They're really, well, the deer, I can't speak on the elk, but they're pretty flighty, and just like elaborating what Blaine said, less is definitely more. I've tried taking a couple buddies in there with me to try and wrangle them in, and if they're not familiar with you, they're definitely a lot more skittish and stuff as opposed to you going in by yourself. If you're the person that's interacting with those animals on a regular basis, they're definitely, their demeanor's a lot calmer when it's just you as opposed to you and a friend of yours or your neighbor or somebody that they're not used to being in contact with regularly. But if one of the old guys,
When we handle our animals, we used to try and push them with trucks, quads, horse, we tried just about everything. And our most success is we try and pull them now. So if there's a pail or two of oats in the back of the quad, wherever you go, they follow you pretty much, if they're trained, if you're working with them. So we've had total success rate. It's not as much excitement because they don't get to bounce off the fences, and the entertainment factor is way less, but it works quite well.
I want to comment on predator proofing your gates. We've never had problems. We never had a problem with predator proofing for elk because the only coyotes we ever found in our elk were kind of flattened. They weren't too active. But we were raising wild boar for a number of years, and you had to be pretty particular there to make sure that they didn't get out, or you weren't going to be very popular around the community. So for the gates, what we found, we got a large power pole, about an 18-inch power pole, and buried that right on the gate line, goes across, and leave it sticking up about 6 inches. And then your gate will just swing tight above that thing all the time and still stay above the ground. And it's still, if that power pole is big enough, you can still drive over there with your vehicles your tractors and your hay and so on, and it'll always stay there. So that's a good way it was a good way to predator-proof the gate system. Eh?
About the dog herding, I will say I'm new, so I would love to be corrected if there's other information, but my husband and I looked into it, 'cause we were like, if we could get a dog to do this for us, that'd be way better. And everything we read was that for elk, their instinct will kick in, and they'll be more likely to kill the dog than for the dog to help.
Hi, my name's Todd Dalton. Getting to the Great Pyrenees dogs. My neighbors have raised them, actually, relatives. 7 of them got into my elk calf pen when I weaned them. I lost a total of 18 elk calves. So my love for a Great Pyrenees dog ends when I pull the trigger on a 300 Winchester Magnum.
Any other questions?
I agree with Todd. Generally, if they're not used to dogs, then I didn't use the 300. I used the 22-250. But Martin just reminded me that Al Morehart had Great Pyrenees and pups raised with whitetails in the pen, and they worked very effectively. And the deer didn't differentiate them from any other member of the herd. They just lived together. Of course, you're going to have to feed dog food, not just deer food, but whatever. So I think it's all about familiarization and training. And if you have intruding dogs, then you have to get rid of them. As my friend on the First Nation that where I was farming, leasing land on there, I said, "What's your policy on dogs?" He says, "The dogs that are outside the fence, that's their dogs. The dogs on the inside of the fence, that's our dogs."
Okay, if there's no other questions, then we're gonna move on. We're gonna have our break right away, but before we have our break, I'm gonna call Blaine up. He's going to present an award.
So there's a lot of people that have had influence on the industry over a lot of years, and without them, it would have been a much more difficult task to get this industry going. And one of the most important is the fencing. So we'd like to present Tom Jensen with a Lifetime Achievement Award for supplying fencing for 30 plus years.
Shelter. Okay, so this one, sorry, it's my fault, I was unprepared. I must have read the first line with my name on it, and I didn't go any further. I thought that's good, because I'm the new guy sitting up here. Okay, so shelter, again, I'll speak to elk, and again, for me, I'm in the bush, like I'm right up against the Prince Albert National Park, so there's lots of shelter. There's all sorts of trees, whether it's poplar or Japanese or spruce. Now, for, like, again, when I started out with the conifers, like I could see, you know, the whole section. I could see the fence I was at and the fence at the far field, so there was none. All I can speak to was towards cattle that I grew up with, and my buffalo. So you can buy windbreaks for these animals, but like, as far as my experiences go, they don't need them, but again, that's my area. What do you guys with no trees say about shelter for elk? Yes, no, maybe.
Wind in the wintertime at low temperature, I have windbreaks just with panels with slots on them, rough slots, and they'll use that, but they'll also bed down on the highest hill in a 20 mile an hour wind at 20 below. So the elk are pretty hardy that way. I think protection for your calves, of shade in the sun, that type of thing is more important than anything.
Lord, you were mentioning mentioned about your flax bale, that they're providing some shelter for your animals, right?
We also have some drill stem panels that we took old grain bin roof sheets and put one back and forth and let the gap between them. We found anything with wood, the cows like to chew it or eat it, and the bulls would want to rub against it and make holes in it. So the steel seems to work good. We're kind of similar as what Harley was saying, is we're trying to move all our posts and everything to steel also, because they seem, even though our cows, maybe that's what's keeping them with good, with the cows, is they're eating the posts. But yeah, anytime, in the wintertime when it's 40 below, we've gone out and the calves and the cows seem to hide behind the shelters, whereas the bulls, they'll be standing out there just being tough, I guess, and they'll herd up in the thing. It's 40 below and it's blowing, but they're just tough bulls, I guess we have. Yeah, if there's anything, I've also put old tanks, got a fertilizer tank with a hole in it, so throw that out. It just gives them something to hang out in the pasture type of thing, or in areas where it's a sand pile where I don't have very good hay. I'll put something there and I'll have something to hang out or hide behind.
Okay, so one thing I do with my buffalo that could work for elk where there's no trees is just so that my hay's close to the fields, I'll stack my hay 2 bales high on the outside of my perimeter fence. The buffalo run in the same pastures as the elk, so it's the 7-foot tall fence. So 2 bales high, that creates quite a wind barrier too. And then what about that deer, guys? So shelter for whitetail, because for me the whitetail's always in the bush, so again, I'm a bush guy.
I've made little windbreaks with bales, same sort of thing in the pen. Calf shelters that you can buy for like beef cattle, and little wind shacks or whatever. I've got those for some of my smaller animals, like my yearlings and stuff, to go in. I mean, just anything to get them out of the wind, I guess, on those storms. But yeah, they'll use them. Lots of times they won't, but give them the option anyways.
Well, I've got a little different story. The property that I purchased came, it had previously been used for a few other things, fallow deer amongst it, but there was an old cattle shelter on my property when I got it, and it was incorporated into my penning and handling system. And anytime I kept elk in there and there was a storm, they were inside the cattle shelter. They took full advantage of it. So I think the moral of the story, I think it was kind of talked about here, is that if you give them shelter, they will use it. And I don't know if I'd want to go out and put up the expense of putting up a cattle shelter for my elk or my deer, but they certainly will use it if you have it.
I came to Saskatchewan because I have a forestry degree, so I got a job here a long time ago. So you flatlanders with no trees, you should just plant some trees along your fence line. That'll help the elk out too. Is that good, Shannon?
Any questions? Okay. Next, we'll talk about calving. Gord's going to talk about that, about what's all involved in it and tagging requirements and all that.
Calving. We try and calve in June for the most part. We've done the earlier ones where we put the bull in, and for us, June is a good month for our operation. A couple of weeks earlier in May doesn't really do much for us. We tag on quads. If there's one or two, if there's 2 quads, sometimes the mothers might be a little bit aggressive. The other quad can move mommy away. But for the most part, we can tag. We sex the animal. We have 2 tagging guns, color for the bulls and color for the cows, and basically snap a tag in their ear. We don't vaccinate or anything, and that's pretty much, we leave them alone at that. We try and tag, we're in there quite a bit, so it's just about daily. If we can have them tag within 2 days, by day 3, they're just about marathon runners. They like to go with pretty good wheels. So yeah, by the 2nd day if we can, for sure, definitely. And depending on the mothers, some of them, they'll stand there and watch you tag them, and some of them will be a little bit more aggressive. So have your running shoes on or have availability. Depending on the height of your grass, if it actually rains, the calves for the elk lay really flat. They're hard to see. We've driven over, or even with a quad, we're standing on a quad driving it, and we've driven over the calf. We haven't seen the calf, and then they make a little bit of noise and go. But we've never actually killed one or hurt it that way that we know of. Yeah. We have never had a trouble with ours calving. We've never had issues. Actually, we did have one cow, years back, and we had the vet had to come out and remove the calf for us. But for the most part, we try and feed a little bit less so they stay a little skinnier maybe, or they just don't get as much oats in the springtime. And that maybe has helped out, but for the most part, we've had 1 out of 25 years that we've had trouble with trying to have a calf. But other than that, no. Twins, we have twins every 3 years. We probably have a set of twins, and pretty much all successful. They've all lived, and they seem to be, once they're growing up, they seem to grow to pretty much the same size as each other or fit right in. They don't seem to be as small as what I've heard some other producers have had for being smaller. Invite questions from the floor. Or anybody else, what do you guys do for calving and tagging? I know some people have had aggressive cows where they don't even go in because the stress from coyotes or outside issues, the animals are just too wound up, so they'll just leave them alone and then tag them at a later time. Some options.
I've got a tag like January 31st, according to the government rules. Or if you want to bend the rules a bit, you can like list your tag numbers and make sure you have the right number of animals with the big tag. And then if you butter that up, just phoned me and said, I'm sorry, this was actually female, this is not male. So there's some ways to manage that, because I tagged them when I was young, spent too many times grabbing the calf and diving into the truck box. So I quit doing that, I just waited, I bring it all into the fall, tag everybody at once, learn the whole group, and that's the way I do it.
Yeah, on the quad, we can manipulate the calf if it gets up and runs against the fence. We figured out how to block it off, and it's quite easy. You can get the bite between the calf and the cow. When we were down in Denver last year for the symposium, the CWE symposium, the girls were tagging with the truck, and they've got some pretty good videos. They same thing, grab the calf when mommy's not looking, and bring it right inside the truck and put the tag in it and pet it a bit. Take some video, YouTube post, and kick them out.
No, I've tried everything on the tagging front. And we used the minivan in the very beginning. Door slide open, go up, grab the calf, bring it in. We never got the door closed, and Mama come in the minivan. That was a wreck. You know, and I think as the animals and where your animals are coming from have become more domesticated, the crazy ones have been, genetics are gone to a degree.
I find eat them.
Yeah. I find it far easier to tag now, and I do, like Gord, most things off the quad.
There's also gates that can fit on your quad. They're manufactured. You can see them in the green book where the beef guys use them. You can drive right up, and you drive over the calf if you can see it, then you can get in. It's an expanded metal or steel of some sort, so you can get in and Mama can't get at you. And those have worked. We actually built one on a truck on the back of a half-ton years back where it slid up. We push it up on the back behind the cab, and then we were tagging, we'd drive in the pasture, we'd pull it off, and then it would be right beside the driver's door. So you could drive along, and again, the grass has got to be short, so we drive along where the calf was beside the calf and drive right over the calf. So you get out, and there's a little swing door that you can get in there with the calf and give it a tag. That turned into too much work for the most part. And the quad was just easier as we got better at working with the animals, so quad was pretty good.
I have a calving story to tell. It's not one from my place, but Todd Dalton's here. I have to tell this one because it come off of their farm. And I'm not sure if Todd was in the truck at the time when this was going on, but they had one that they tagged the calf. They put the calf inside the cab of the truck, and of course Mom was quite distraught about this. And I think even the first time she jumped in the back of the truck looking for this calf, but every other time that that truck came into the pasture, the cow would come up to the truck and jump in the back of the truck and beat on the roof of the cab of the truck because it was still mad at them for taking the calf away on her.
We use a smaller tag for the boys and the girls, like the calves, different color for male, female, and it's just a temporary tag for the summer. And then as the animal gets bigger, then we have our provincial tags that will snap in. We use the same hole that we put back in. The new tag guns, we used to use the red handled ones. With my daughter, she didn't have the strength to squeeze it, and now Allflex has come out with it's a smaller gun with a different handle shape on it, so it's a lot easier to squeeze with one hand, and it doesn't have the pinch point in it. There's a pinch point on the red ones that sometimes it'll want to bite you if you're not careful of how you're tagging it. So definitely, if you're looking for the new tag guns, the blue handled one is what you want to be looking for sure. And then after we separate the cows and the calves, when we wean them, we've got a small drop box. It's an old, actually, deer-producing drop box we use to run the calves through it. It works quite well, and we can work with the animals. And that's when we'll put in their steel HFA tag, and we change out we just cut out the temporary tag that we use for calving, and then snap in the provincial tag with the number of what we're going to work with. Yeah, I think we're 2 tags, I guess. 2 tags. We have 2 provincial tags. And then the RFID. Ian, is there anything you want to share with the new RFID tags? Are we going to be looking at anything in that zone for being mandatory, I guess? Or Ian's kind of our lead with the RFID tags, the electronic tags.
There's no thought of, at this time, making RFID mandatory at the federal level. Okay, there's RFID options that are available, and especially I recommend that one I mentioned yesterday, that Shearwell Met RFID metal tag, and you can clip them into the back edge of the ear, and they're very unobtrusive and 99.9% retention, and you've got the RFID option, or if you have the animal in the squeeze, you can read it. So that, to me, is the very best option that's available for us with the coming federal laws. But the deal that has been made with Saskatchewan and Alberta is that because they were supplying their own tags, they had official tags, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but it's basically a reciprocal arrangement that the feds have agreed for the time being to recognize all official Saskatchewan tags as official federal tags, and vice versa. If you choose to use the federal tags, Saskatchewan's going to recognize them as official tags. And when you're going across the US border, the requirement is you have to have 1 readable dangle and 1 official tag, and that official tag can be official from the province or the feds. So that's kind of the tagging situation right now. Manitoba has gone completely to fed tags. They don't issue those tags anymore. Every producer in Manitoba has to get them from CCIA. But that's working well, and they supply the tags easily. Talking about calving, I just wanted to mention a couple of alternative ideas, and we've mostly given up on tagging at birth. We go in and check the herd to see if there's nobody having any trouble, and if we fortuitously see a calf, we've got the kit there and we pop a tag in it. But other than that, we just leave them, don't interfere, don't work them up. And then in the summertime or late summer, say in September, first week of September, when you're getting ready for the breeding season, then bring them all through, tag all the calves. And then I get one of my favorite jobs, which is sitting in the truck with binoculars and a case of beer and matching cows and calves. It's perfect. And the only problem with that is that elk sometimes swap calves or steal calves. And I've seen it happen quite a few times. I won't say it happens any more than 2% of the time. But if you, let's say you AI, and you really want to keep track of who is who without DNA, then you really do have to be tagging those calves at birth and make sure that you watch it, that you get the right cow. So that's just a couple of additional points.
Yeah, we on our ranch earlier, we found that there was always discrepancies between who the mother was. They were sharing too much. Sometimes we'd have 3 calves on one mom having a party, I guess. But when when we order tags also from the government, we'll order a couple extra just in case that year of animal, because like 2024 is the next coming up year here, so we'll start all our tag numbers with 4 on our ranch. So it'll be a 401 or 402, so we can look at it, we know what year it's born, and also with the date, what's our letter this year? M. So it'll be an M, so it'll be an M401, and we know it's going to be a 2024. And we also change colors every year, so this year I'm not sure what flavor we're at, but I think it's orange maybe, and every year we'll change a different color. So between that, we can visually look quickly, and it gives us an easy idea of what year. If the animals are older, sometimes you'll get double colors and stuff, but tags are faded. But for the most part, when they do rip a tag out, then we'll have an extra tag to pop in next time we run them through the squeeze or wrestle them down.
One unique feature of the federal system is that it requires 2 tags, okay? So you have to have 2 tags that are correlated in your computer, but for the federal regulations, they have to be the same number on each of those tags, the same unique ISO number. So all the tags that you buy from CCIA come as a set of 2, all the Cervid tags. When a CCIA tag falls out, you've lost that second tag. You have to replace both of them. And they change it in the database at CCIA, you change it in your home records. And you correlate the previous tag in your computer records with the new tag. Okay. Yeah, they're the shits. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so what Todd is asking is, he said he got, okay, we've been using Ketchum tags since the 1940s, and they were robust, they had good retention, but Ketchum changed their metal formula, and now those tags, Harvey and I spent a lot of time on this. He had old tags, I don't know where he even got them from, but you could not twist those tags. Okay, the new Ketchum tags, you could twist them in a circle. You do anything with them. They're just useless. And so we talked to Ketchum, asked them to fix those tags and make more robust tags. They said, we just sent 2 million of those to Russia. We don't have anybody else complaining about it. We're not changing anything. And so they will be officially taken off the approved list. And they are replaced by this Shearwell Met tag. And they are robust. There's no mistakes with them. They close perfectly. They're strong. They work perfectly. And so that's what we'll move to for metal tags. Yes, okay, Connie's just clarifying that the federal tags are only required when the animals leave the farm. There's different provincial requirements for tagging, but the federal requirement only applies when the animal leaves the farm. So on the farm, as far as the feds are concerned, you can just have a management tag in their ear, and that's all they require. However, you have to obey your provincial rules, which generally require, 6 months or 1 year? When do you have to have your calves tagged in Saskatchewan? 1 year? Okay, so you have to have them tagged by 1 year of age with 2 tags, correct? Yeah, okay. Same in Alberta.
On our farm, we've always had trouble identifying the animals because they're running or walking along the fence with their tag against the fence. And so we have to wait till they turn around or whatever. We got with Doris at Saskag, and for the last couple of years now, at least, maybe even 3, we've been able to put the exact number on both sides of the tag and the same tag on right ear and left ear. So it's official. The official number for the animal for the system. What they've been able to do is put the Sask emblem on one side of the tag at the top and the herd, what is it, the herd identification number on the opposite side at the top of the tag, so that the number of the animal is in large on both sides of the tag, large enough you can read them, and with opposing colors for the number and the tag, so you get a dark tag and a light number or vice versa, and it's been working real well on our farm if you can do it right.
And Doris will have the options for you. She'll email you a list and you'll have different colors and the different styles of what you want, if you want a dark background or whichever, and numbers on both sides. Previously we were dealing, I think, with all flex, and we didn't have those options. And the new tags now that Sask Ag are using are Ritchie, if I'm correct. Yeah, so Ritchie, and there's a few different options with them and more sizes. So they seem to be a good tag from what we used last year anyways.
Thank you. All right, so now I will get Blaine to come here again, and he's going to talk about the elk antler income possibilities and where to sell your elk antler. Or he's not here. Is he? Stepped out? Okay, we'll skip it. We'll go. What? We will skip then and come back to him and go to Harley to talk about elk meat income possibilities and where to sell the elk meat.
I guess I'm a bit like Mark on this. I am unprepared for this.
I think Shanda added to the list after she's read it first.
Yeah.
I think nobody reads my
She voluntold us on everything. Where are we marketing our elk meat? Okay, I guess I might be a bit biased on this. I'm a director on the Owalco board, so I'm going to lean more towards Owalco. I know there's other buyers in the room, and that's great. So, as far as I know, there is no issue getting rid of any meat animals that you might have available, because Owalco for sure would take them at any time. Current pricing is $5.50 a pound on the rail, $12.15 a kg. And I think there's a few producers too, like Gord. He does a lot of off-farm sales. You're doing pretty good with that, I believe, Gord?
Yeah, we've got a small store.
Yeah, we have a small store in Battleford that's selling our product, and we also farm gate just through, I guess it's Kijiji we have ads on, and Facebook, buy and sell our marketplace. And most of our market is to people in the cities for the most part, or hunters that did not get drawn and they want elk and they can't get. And we get a lot of positive responses with the flavor and the taste of the elk. We kill all on farm ourselves. And then there's no trailer, there's no stress. We basically just run in and play boom boom stick with the quad, and they have no idea what's going on. And the other existing farmers or ranchers, hunters are saying that they find a difference in the quality of meat. They're really happy with our product and stuff. And we're believing it's because we kill on farm and the way we handle the animals and stuff, and grain feed with the minerals, the proper minerals. But yeah, it's been pretty good. It is tough go, especially the online stuff, because we'll get orders in, and it's what's real and what's not real. So they'll send you an order of steaks and roasts or however, and we'll go to the deep freezers and package it all up. We take a picture of it, email or text the picture to the customer with the price of it, and then all of a sudden they disappear. So you just work for 20 minutes and there's no guarantee. It doesn't happen often, but it does, definitely. So we're toying the ideas of, we're not sure do you take a deposit when they make an order so you don't have to go out, because it's all extra work. But for the most part, as it's starting to build, it is getting a little bit easier, and we're learning as we go. Karen, but Yeah, it's, we didn't originally get into this to be meat salesmen, but it has been an extra revenue source for sure. And we eat a lot of steaks ourselves because a lot of times they're a little higher price, so it's good for you. It keeps the fuel tank. You know, it's slowly picking up. I would say we're probably moving 4 animals to 5 animals right now a year, I guess. Yeah, and it's been picking up more and more. I guess we would probably, 8? Okay, sorry, 8. Yeah, 8 so far, and I would guess we're probably going to be up to 9 or 10 in the next year or 2. Yeah, as people, the response has been good. It's repeat traffic, and I think with the protein industry, with the meat prices, the beef prices being so high, our price list is looking kind of in zone now, because we used to be quite a bit higher than what beef was at one time. But right now we're kind of getting that, we're probably on par. Probably some of our stuff, because we're not a whole lot higher, I would guess, eh? Yeah. I'm not sure what we're going to do in the future, how much a guy can bring. A WAPCO price, so an average animal, I guess, for Harley, a bull would bring you out of a WAPCO $1,800 to $1,900, depending on the size of the bull, and a cow would probably be around $1,600 to $1,700.
I'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay,
in my
less
WAPCO report, but yeah,
so
your older cows will bring you now about $1,800.
Okay.
Average. Bulls, you're probably closer to $2,300 to $2,500 just for meat.
Okay. So I think we bank off of, we try and sell our farm gated stuff. Our formula is get what we'll get wholesale, and then I think we're about 30 to 40% that we try and get on top of it, on top of our costs of cutting and processing. So we're trying to aim for a 30 to 40% margin. And for, I guess, a manufacturing business, or if you want to call yourself manufacturing or a retail side, that's not really that high. So it'd be nice, I guess, if we could hit a 50%, if the market will bring it. But we're about a 30 to 40, I guess, percent, depending on what the cut is on top of. That's kind of our margin that we're looking at to make it worth our while.
I guess for the new producers that are here, or anybody else that doesn't realize this, WAPCO is a producer-owned co-op that you buy shares into and just deliver them to Fort McLeod for slaughter. I guess I don't have ambition like Gord, so I find it easier just to throw a load on the trailer and head out there, pick up a check in 2 weeks. So I'll let Blaine give a little speech here.
Over the last couple of years, well, quite a few years ago, I got involved with Murray Woodbury. We depopulated fallow deer on Sydney Island, just off Victoria. They were having a problem, too many of them, no natural predators. That process involved bringing a provincially certified semi-trailer that had been converted to a mobile slaughter unit, complete to regulations that allowed it to be moved around, and was never done federally with federal certification, but definitely with provincial. So after that experience, a few years later, the guys that owned it out in northern BC, we got in touch with them, and Gordon and I were involved in getting it certified and using it in Saskatchewan for a while, but the goal has always been to have it federal, and we hit a roadblock. We're unable to do that. But during that process, we went in and took out some, well, there was one 500-acre property that was kind of a hunt ranch. Well, it was a harvest preserve at one time, but it had been let gone, and there was about, well, there was pretty close to 100 animals on it. And we had the trailer down there twice, didn't we, Gordon? Yeah. And it worked well. It worked really well. I think, what did we do that first run? Number of animals in 2 days, 40? 35, 40? Yeah, it was more than full. But it had rails in it, full chiller, and everything. It was nice, and it worked well. It's just that you've got to have a steady supply, you've got to have an outlet for the meat, and it's labor intensive, so you got to really watch to make it worthwhile. If we could have got federal inspection on it, think it probably would be a thing, but without federal inspection, it didn't make sense. In that process, I ended up taking another 16 cows from that operator that he wanted gone. And those 16 cows I sold over the last 18 months. That half of it was done in quarters and sides, and the other half was processed. And so 18 months I moved 16 carcasses, cow carcasses. And the demand has definitely increased in the last year or so.
Any questions about the meat income possibilities?
I know you mentioned on-farm slaughter, which obviously negates some of the issues of finding an abattoir, but other than the WAPCO, which was mentioned, are there other abattoirs that you find are receptacle to taking in live animals of elk for your own on-farm sales versus having to butcher kill on-farm and then bring it to the abattoir so that it can be sold into stores or restaurants?
Diamond 7 Meats in Lloydminster, they have the handling facilities to handle bison and elk, so you can bring them in live in your stock trailer, and then they'll take care of them from there. Also, Martinsville, the smokehouse, they're set up now also to take live animals. And to my knowledge, I think, does anybody know of any other places, or Lee Ross?
Lee Ross does as well,
okay.
For sure. I've used them quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a meat shop. Remember the name of them, Wayne?
Sure.
Yeah, Lee Ross.
Larson
Meats, yes.
Larson, Lee Ross.
And there's a number of other options that you can go for, and the biggest question is how far do you want to haul them, and the cost of transport now, with a 52-foot ground load, you're at about $7.70 a loaded mile. So if you're hauling a long ways, it just takes all the value out of it. We can go to the U.S. There's plants in the U.S. that are buying steadily and paying comparable prices. It's worthwhile making 2 or 3 calls if you have animals that you want to sell, because there's advantages and disadvantages to each one of them. If your animals are going to the States, you can sell them to a buyer, and you're essentially selling your CWD status. The animals don't have to be tested in the U.S., and that's an added benefit, plus you get the same price. But it's only economically feasible for the southeastern corner of Saskatchewan, because otherwise you're a lot better off going to, with a WAPCO to either Fort McLeod or to CPM in Lacombe, which is a federal and EU inspected plant. And then you also have the option of rangeland in Alberta. They're buying elk again, processing at Lacombe. And again, comparable prices. Who am I missing? In Manitoba, we've got one federally inspected plant, Carmen, and they'll do elk, but they do a terrible job of processing. They're basically deboning processing plant, but they do a lot of work for A&W on beef cows. But in Alberta, there's 3 federal plants, right? Wetaskiwin's federal too. And Wetaskiwin, I believe, is also EU. So there's a number of options, and it's worthwhile making a call. And the option you choose depends upon what you want for the end result, the price that you get, and how close you are to each one of these plants.
Thanks, Ian.
And they're all looking for meat. There's a demand for the product. As much as we can get, they'll take for sure. The WAPCO's closed down markets because they couldn't supply. But yet we still import a lot of venison into Eastern Canada from New Zealand and other countries for sure.
That's one problem we have in our area. All our local abattoirs have kind of shut down. So I guess that's part of the reason we send a lot out west too as well. Because right now we're looking at about 45-minute haul with the animal that we shot on the farm. So we don't appreciate that animal coming to us, all or else really round. Loaded up, right? So it's not good for meat that way.
One thing, Ian, there's no Sask animals going in Carmen, is there?
No.
That's the one thing that blocks the southeast. We can't kill Sask animals in Manitoba. They won't let them cross the border.
Any other questions? All right, so now I will get Blaine to talk about elk antler income possibilities and where you could sell that.
Okay, so Norelco was formed, Ralph, have we got 20 years in? Or 15, 20 years in? 04? Okay, 20 years. We formed it in the hopes of raising the price of the products that we generated, because the velvet market especially was controlled by pretty much a single desk. It was kind of a wheat pool situation, in our opinion. So we got involved and were able to bring the price up. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago where we were able to pay a little over $50 a pound. But with being locked out of Korea, still after, when did that gate close? 2001, I think maybe? 01. It's been a struggle. Velvet's been a struggle. The decline, I know there was 12 to 14 containers going out of Canada at one time. Well, North America maybe, but the bulk of it coming out of Saskatchewan and Alberta. And you can figure 25,000 pounds a container, probably on average. We did stuff one container at Davidson with 32,000 pounds. And we're able to access buyers and move it direct to Vancouver and then off to Hong Kong. That was all legal, all done under CFIA permits and everything. The most Norelco moved in a season was a little over 60,000 pounds. Last year we moved 4. There just isn't the volume anymore. We lost contact with some of the buyers because we didn't have the volume. And also what happens, it was the way the velvet is collected, it's done in the frozen state, put in a reefer, right into a refrigerated container that's put on a ship and ends up in Hong Kong. It's fairly expensive because you got to keep it at minus 20 C, and when it gets to Hong Kong it can be stalled and the buyer ends up paying storage on that dock. And so the evolution that happened is the few buyers that we had left wanted it dried, so negating the refrigerated storage at the other end. So we ended up, there was only one drying plant, so we ended up working with that drying plant because the buyers demanded it, more or less, which put us back into a single desk situation. I don't think, Ian, have you got numbers? In my head, I'm saying Canada doesn't produce more than 40,000 pounds of antler anymore.
That's a good estimate, I think.
Yeah.
And you know, the price that I've heard is kind of the same thing we hear from the single desk every year. Kind of like last year.
Yeah, kind of like last year. That's and things are always very, very bad in China.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Very bad, very bad. Yeah, they were just over there and terrible. But we could take it off your hands for maybe gonna go $30.
Yeah. I think until something changes where we could access market direct, which I'm more than happy to do, and get it directly into mainland China where the drying plants are, or the holy grail would be Korea, South Korea. Until that happens, velvet production is stuck at $30, 35, maybe 35, depends. That processing plant in Calgary is getting to the point where he doesn't have enough to run it full season, so it's becoming an issue for him as well.
We should mention Holly Bamber too. Yes. She does buy about 10,000 pounds.
Yeah, she's getting there. I think she's got some markets, definitely. She produces everything that's are a lot of what's used in North America.
Yeah.
Different process. She used freeze drying as opposed to the traditional method of heat and air.
And you need to deliver to Sangudo, Alberta,
Yeah.
which costs, but she pays a steady 35 something.
She was at 35 last year. Yeah. Norelco has been able to match and keep it going, and we'll talk about that more during the presentation probably this afternoon. But we've been able to subsidize with and bring it up a couple bucks to the producers to match pricing. But that is probably, if something doesn't change drastically in the amount of revenue we get off of the other things we do, the little bit of other things we do, that'll be an end. So there is some bright lights in the tunnel. Hopefully not an oncoming train this time, but we've got a couple of. I've got a new contact which I have not heard. Whether they're real or not, I don't know. There looks like some product that is being legally shipped into another Asian market. We're going to explore that. So I'm not going to be totally negative on it, but it's really up to the producer. You will always be able to sell your velvet. There's definitely no doubt about that. It's just a matter of what are you going to get for it, and is it worth your time? So, if we could get a border open for frozen green antler legally into mainland China or South Korea, the picture would change. However, New Zealand, the largest domestic producer of antler in the world, at probably 800 metric tons last year, their world price converted to Canadian dollars really isn't a whole lot more. Maybe $8 to $10 more a pound to the producer. So as things evolve, we'll see what happens. And we'll be here, we're not going anywhere. But, the price is what it is. Questions? Hard antler? Norelco has never been involved in buying hard antler. There's a lot of guys that buy hard antler. Harley can probably give you more info on that than me. They've been buying hard antler long before there was a domestic elk industry, I think, due to shed pickers and everything else. So the Boy Scouts in Yellowstone, John would know more about that. They have a big auction every year from what's gathered in the park and surrounding area, Wyoming and stuff. So, I've heard anywhere from $6 US a pound to 15. So the incentive, as I understand it, and I've never been involved in it that much, but the hard antler buyer will do it, and what he's looking for is that trophy set of antlers that he can sell into the craft market for way, way, way more than what he's paying you for, but subsidize it by a lower price for your basic antler.
Have you guys looked in as a process towards the pet market? For example, I know raw food people, like they buy velvet privately at least, and they sell a little bit more than what you're saying for comparable prices of like $30 per pound. I know they have sold for, as a supplement for dogs and otherwise, like $50, $60 per pound to people, or in the way of antlers just cut up, so not those trophy antlers. They buy anywhere from $20 to $25 Canadian per pound. As long as it's cut up, has that been looked at more?
For sure, no. We haven't ventured into that market, but part of Norelco's, we're all volunteers and have several different lives going. Concentrating on the velvet has been the project. A lot of producers are doing individual things with pet food. There is a couple other, Holly Bamber's original business was in the pet food market. I think that was bought by Russell Gooch. Is he still active? I'm not sure. I don't think that is active anymore. So it's been a cottage industry, the pet food market so far for antlers. I myself sell hard antler to one of the pet food guys for that $15 a pound range. So when I have it, but it's low volume. We haven't found anybody that. I shouldn't say that. Puppy Love out of Fort McLeod buys a lot of hard antler, and they're usually at least $12 to $15 a pound. I haven't sold to them for a couple of years because I found a local market. They will buy hard antler. They move quite a bit.
I'll expand a little bit on the hard antler. At least I know what's going on south of the border. I don't know who's buying up here north. But I can name at least 3 buyers off the top of my head. Good antler, good quality antlers running, 15 to 22 a pound. If you're velveting, or if you're cutting hard antler right after they pull the velvet off, they always ask to wait like 30, 60 days. Go ahead and let that blood get on out, let that antler harden a little bit. Otherwise, they're not going to pay as much for that because they say it still has an odor to it. They can't get that out. People don't want to buy that. They don't like cutting it up. But like I say, I know we have at least 3 good buyers on the south side, and there's probably more. When you get into the craft market, like Blaine said, that those antlers are going to go for a lot higher, and you've probably got that up here where you've got people that are doing decorations and things like that. But the dog food or the dog chews are what's hit so big down south, and why that hard antler's going a pretty good price.
Any other questions? All right, so if we're moving on, then I'm going to get Dave to talk about the deer markets. We've been talking about elk antler and elk meat, so Dave's going to speak to what markets are available for deer.
All right, so speaking on whitetails, you can be a producer, and then if you've got the cash and stuff like that to start your own hunt thing, where you're able to self-sustain and operate, keep stocking your own operation, you can do that. You can just be a producer and sell to the hunting operations. There really isn't much of a meat market for deer that I'm aware of. It might be different for fallow deer or something like that. I can't really speak on that. And then with the antlers, I mean, I've cut up a few antlers for dog treats for friends and that kind of stuff. I mean, it would, I guess, depend on how motivated you are to do that sort of thing, but I do believe that elk antler is preferred over deer antler. It tends to splinter a little bit when it dries out. So, I think they prefer elk antler for dog chews, but you can make their own decisions. Other than that, it's more about the hunting and stuff like that right now. So that's kind of the avenue. If you're good at tanning your own leather and you want to make gloves, by all means, probably can make a couple bucks there. But the one time I tried to sew something, I sewed it to the pants that I was wearing, so I gave that up pretty quick. Any questions?
Okay, if there's no questions, then I'll get Lance to talk about hunt farms. If you had some animals that you wanted to sell to a hunt farm, how would you go about that?
Okay, my name is Lance Miller. My dad got into the deer industry in '96, and I've been hooked ever since. It's been a wonderful ride. Enjoy it very much. He soon got sick of it. He's a grain farmer. He loves his grain farming, so I had the opportunity to buy him out. And I started my hunt ranch back in 2010, I think it was. I think that first year we killed maybe 3 animals, and last 3 years we've been averaging a little over 100. So it's been a very good run. I can't sell enough. I mean, I can't source enough deer. I get hunters calling all the time. I'm booking into 2026 because I just can't supply the deer. And there is a lot of yeah, I think sky's the limit for raising deer. We might not have the other options that elk do, but whitetail is the #1 big game animal in North America to be hunted. And people come year after year. I've had guys that have come since 2010. They keep coming, they bring buddies, and it's been really good. And I think some people might argue with me, but I think it is the driving force of this industry. You know, when you got some of these guys who, you know, they're very successful businessmen. They don't have a lot of time to do their hunts, you know, in the free range and stuff. But, you know, the preserve hunting is growing. It's way more accepted than it used to be. Sky's the limit. You do a good job, you provide a good hunt, you treat them right, and those guys will keep coming back for a long time. And there's a lot of money in this world. When I first got into it, I was very nervous. You know, I didn't know how many guys would actually spend money on a deer hunt, but some of these guys have budgets that you can't even imagine. I mean, they got lots of money, and there is a huge opportunity in this industry for hunt ranches, elk, deer, and I think, yeah, I guess I'm very pro hunt, as you can tell, but it's amazing what some guys can do, and yeah, I guess, you know, and just for a little, you know, on my whitetail hunts, you know, so we get them to come down, they stay, they hunt, they go back, you know, we do that. But you know, they pay for quality, and when you can put them in front of 200 inch, 300 inch deer, you know, and you, free range guys won't like this, but you know, you go in the free range and you hunt out there, depends where you are, I guess, but I mean, you know, to shoot 160 inch deer, 170, it's not that easy. It's a tough, you gotta really put in some time. And you know, you come to these preserves, we've been very diligent with our genetics. We've spent a lot of money on genetics. You know, we can get our 2-year-old bucks anywhere from 180 inches to 400 inches. So, you know, in 2 years, we've got a marketable animal. So the turnover is very quick. And yeah, I don't know, I can't really say enough good about the hunt industry and what Saskatchewan can provide. I think there's a lot of room to go forward. Is there any questions? You can. Elk are typically more aggressive than a deer would be, so you probably, I haven't bought elk. I'm strictly whitetail. Bentley could answer this a lot better than I could, but from what I've heard from Dean and Jason over the years, and Todd and different ones of them, that they do it, and it works, but yeah, they often don't hang out together. So if your hunt style is, you know, more towards baiting, you're probably going to see more elk than deer. But you know, every hunt ranch has their own style of doing things too. So it just depends which way you like to do it, I guess.
Thanks.
And if you're just a producer and you have animals, how would you go about trying to sell them to a hunt farm?
Yeah, so I guess if you're a producer and you're looking for a hunt farm, like was mentioned here, you know, coming to a convention like this is a good place to start. The next best place to start is producers. Someone mentioned here that there's a lot of good people, and there is. They're very helpful people. The more producers you know, the more you'll find out. They're very helpful. They'll give you the information you need. So, in my opinion, it's getting to know people, coming to functions like this. You get to meet people, and yeah, picking up the phone and calling producers. I think that's your best option, in my opinion.
Okay, so now I'll go back to Blaine, just to give, if you're a brand new producer and, or somebody wants to get into this industry, just give a really brief overview of how you go about looking for animals, like where would you start?
Mark says you can't buy any animals. Is that right?
Well, I got ads on Kijiji. I'm not a Facebook guy, but I use my broker's account. I put ads on there, and like I don't got prices on there, and it's hard to get people to. Well, zero response. I have, spikers. I'll tell you, like Harvey and Ian have found me cows. Harvey mentioned that maybe you can find a few bulls, but like it's a lot of work. So for the guys that are here in the industry, and my question to you is, how many animals do we got to sell to the 4 newbies I think are asking questions in here? Because I'd actually rather buy more, so I don't know, do we have all the cows selling to you guys? I don't even know.
Depends on price.
Yeah, that's probably
And I think your basic cow right now, and meat's gonna have an effect on that, because if I can get $2,000 to $3,000 off a meat cow, I'm probably not gonna take that for a breeding animal, because my meat cow isn't gonna be my best one, right? So, selling good breeding stock, I think, when we came in, basically, it was ridiculous. Anything that could produce a calf, didn't matter on genetics or anything else. Heifers were going for unproven heifers were going for $11,000. Good genetic cows were going for $20,000 to $30,000 a piece. I'm kind of hoping to see that, but really not, because it pretty much killed the meat industry and a few other things, and it got people in way over their heads, and it was a blind alley, because there was no sustaining those prices. I think good genetic cows will probably be started at double meat price and go from there. But I think once a price is established, there's animals to buy.
And what you would say, just come to events like this to
Sure.
get connected?
The association could be a little more proactive on this. We have a list of producers on the website, on the Facebook page, and with contact information. And that's probably the easiest. We at one time, the association produced a handbook with a map of Saskatchewan where every farm was and the contact numbers of that. I think that's something that should be done again.
Maybe I could add just a few words onto that. When you're deciding to get into the business, I think the first thing you need to do is decide what part of the business do you want to be in, what appeals to you. You've heard Lance talking about hunting, you've heard different people talking about meat and supplying whitetail bucks to the hunt farms. There's a lot of options. And if you decide that you want to access the most markets, then you should buy certified animals, so HCP certified animals, because that gives you access to the U.S. You have to be certified to the U.S. And there's a couple of new producers I was talking to here that just shipped their first bulls down to the States. How long did you guys start ago? How long ago did you start? 3 years. So they shipped their first bulls down to the States, and it used to be a huge discrepancy between the amount that Saskatchewan hunt farm operators would pay and the amount you could get in the U.S. And that gap is closing, because the demand for bulls here in Saskatchewan, right now, if anybody's got 25 hunt bulls to sell, you are in the driver's seat, right? And so that's the biggest problem with trying to supply animals for Mark. He's only got so much of a budget. I'm not criticizing you, Mark. I shouldn't even use your name. But anyway, trying to sell animals to anybody, when Blaine.
To me, my budget gets bigger.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is that it's hard to find animals, for that price. And as Blaine said, if you're going to go for the meat market, you can't be paying any less than what the meat market would pay. So the meat market is strong enough at $5.50 or $6 a pound. That those cows, I shipped cows the other day that weighed close to 400-pound carcasses. So do the math on that, and you're not those cows for less than $2,500. And if they got good genetic potential behind them, or simply the cows that'll grow to the meat size that they are, then you're going to pay more money. You're going to be paying, as Blaine said, $4,000. So you got to look at, where do I want to fit? What market do I want to pursue? And if you decide that you want to pursue all the market, including access to the U.S., again, consider buying from certified farms. That then puts your source of animals down again. You know, you're only at about 10, 12 certified farms in Saskatchewan, something like that. So then you got to go and talk to them and pay their prices. But you know, if you just to add a little bit to what Lance said about the whitetail market, the market for elk bulls for hunt farms is truly amazing. There's one outfit down in Utah and Idaho. They have 2 ranches. They kill 550 bulls a year, and they are looking for a steady supply at that kind of a level. There's 4,000 deer farms and ranches and hunt operations in Texas. So it is truly a huge market.
Okay, so other questions on that? I know they're putting out lunch, are almost ready for that. So lastly, I'll just get Harvey to talk about CWD testing and TVS testing, just to touch on what's required there.
Okay, I was going to want to speak if there was nobody else talking anyway, and it's a bit of a segue from what we were just talking about into what I'm going to talk about. Just a short introduction. My name's Harvey Petrachik. I started in this business in 1988, and I didn't start as a producer. I started on the other side of the fence. I was in government, and we were in the business of putting everybody in business. Things were really tough at that time. You couldn't move anything. You couldn't sell cattle. You couldn't sell grain. Land wasn't worth a lot in some places, and the government people today said, hey, let's try and find something that's going to get things moving. So we jumped on the diversified livestock and got into knowing all about the elk and buffalo and a bunch of that. So I've seen it grow, I've seen it rise, I've seen it fall, I've seen it grow again. But one of the things that's crept into this whole business is disease testing. And just to kind of put a finish on what we were just talking about with breeding stock, one of the big problems that we have with moving stock of that kind is disease status of different herds. And it can get complicated because, as we said, Ian alluded to certified herds. For those that are new into the room, there's a national voluntary herd certification program where you are certified to be free of chronic wasting disease. It takes you a period of time, a very vigilant set of tests, and record keeping that are supposed to ensure that these animals are free of chronic wasting disease. In addition to that, there is monitoring for tuberculosis and brucellosis. These diseases all fall into a category which is called reportable diseases, and they are nationally reportable to Canadian Food Inspection Agency if there is evidence of the disease either in a slaughtered or dead animal, or, and this word, and Connie will love this word, suspicion of disease in these animals. They are to be reported to the federal veterinarians at CFIA, and it creates a disease response. There's some good reasons why we do monitor for these diseases, so that I'll kind of split this in half. Tuberculosis and brucellosis are diseases that not only can affect our animals, but can affect other forms of livestock. So we get dragged into the bigger picture of testing and monitoring for these diseases to help maintain a herd status for all livestock in Canada, which is important for trade agreements with countries like the United States and others. You don't just pick up and move stuff across the border, either in terms of live animals or products, unless there are certain standards that are met. In our animals, in our cervids, we are on a program for testing for TB and brucellosis every 5 years. You are not required to test for it, but you are strongly encouraged to test for it. As the form of encouragement is that you do not move your animals or transport them off your farm unless they go to direct slaughter, unless you have a current status in TB and brucellosis. Now, what is involved with this is the testing of all of the live animals on your farm. It is a blood test, which is done for both the brucellosis and tuberculosis, and we're moving away from the brucellosis test in a lot of places, not so much in Canada yet, but a lot of states in the United States. John, you can tell me how many there is. So it's 13?
Almost 15.
Okay, that many now that do not require brucellosis testing in their cervids. Because the first question becomes, well, when was the last time you heard about a deer or an elk with brucellosis? And so we're slowly being able to escape that. TB has been a lot of the same story, is that, well, when was the last time you heard about TB in a domestic animal? Well, it hasn't been for quite a long time. And I'm not going to turn this into a political statement, but it is a pain in the butt to do it because it's a restriction. It gets tied to the movement of your animals. So what's happened over the years with the markets that have contracted is that a lot of producers have not maintained TB and brucellosis testing on their animals, so they are not eligible to move off their farms unless it goes direct to slaughter. And again, as Mark we were just talking about some of these animals that you find a herd of them. They're compliant with the province as far as their license. Some of them maybe not so, but they're still there, and you can't move them anywhere because they got to be identified and tested. And the only way you can do that is to either test them all on site or move them into an approved quarantine facility where you can do that. The second part of it, and I'm trying to keep this as short as I can here because everybody's probably getting hungry, is testing for chronic wasting disease. And our provincial law is that we are to test every animal over the ages of 12 months. Is the correct age? 12 months. Any animal over 12 months of age that either dies or is processed for meat or hunted, that there is a test of that animal, a post-mortem test involving collection of the brain obex and the retropharyngeal lymph nodes for the presence of chronic wasting disease. As I said, we talked about certified herd status. Those are the herds where they've maintained testing records and they said this is free of the disease. That is called a gold standard test, and that is the one I said it's an internationally recognized test. It is the be all and end all of testing for CWD. And what was up until a short time ago was the only accepted method of testing them. Since 2018, there has been a rule change where chronic wasting disease, even though it is a federally reportable disease, Canadian Food Inspection Agency will not commence a depopulation of your farm if CWD is found, unless you are on herd certification and found to be compliant with the program. In that option, a lot of the producers now are maintaining their operations as CWD positive farms, and they are in a state of quarantine under the provincial government. What we have started doing with some of those farms in Saskatchewan is I can say this very proudly, is that we're leading this in North America about testing on farms and finding out what's going on with the disease and taking on management strategies to do it. We have a program where we live test, it's called the Ramwalt test. We take a piece of
of skin that is around the rectum of the animal and their lymph nodes in that piece of skin. And we put it under a microscope and we stain it and we check for the presence of CWD. It's not necessarily a perfect system, but it at least tells us, you know, if the animals are carrying it. So if you'd like to learn and read about more of that, I've got a poster on the wall which outlines what our project is. Take some time to walk over and have a look at it. But that's kind of the quick and dirty summary on the disease testing in our animals.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, so once again, thank you to any new or credentialed producers for coming to our open house, and feel free to come to our next convention, either as somebody who wants to learn more or as a brand new producer. Like a lot of them said, if you want to learn stuff, talk to them, tour the farms, see what everybody's doing. Feel free to email the SCA at saskcervidalliance@gmail.com. You can ask to be added to our mailing list. You can also ask for a link to the recording of this panel. We'll have it up in, we'll have it up in a couple months probably. Both our website and email address are on the programs that are on your tables. And then on the registration table over there, we have some copies of a newsletter that we put out and a copy of the brochure on elk farming that you can feel free to take. And if you want to purchase the elk farming handbook, talk to one of us, and we'll have lunch now. So during lunch, feel free to mingle, ask any of the burning questions that you haven't had answered yet. And after lunch, we'll resume the rest of our convention. And make sure to look at all the silent auction items too. Okay.